Well, hello everyone, it's Brett here, Lionheart84, and I wanted to talk about today and feature for people who are interested my tips my tip for 3 of the easiest, most forgiving, toughest of the genuine subtropical fruits, subtropical to tropical, I would say, which I think that most enthusiastic beginners could have a really good go at growing them in this country, and I'll try and explain why they're forgiving and why they're the ones you should try to grow and have a very, very good chance of probably seeing at some station flowers on them and possibly fruits. And I'll try and remember the various pros and cons of these particular plants, but I thought it might interest people who have been thinking of trying to grow something tropical, because it can be a very, very frustrating process, because basically a lot of the tropicals you try to grow here are very, very difficult to keep alive and get flowers on, and they grow to quite a substantial size and can be many years before they flower and fruit, and also they don't like our winter conditions at all. Take a long time for the fruits to mature, and all of those sort of factors can make a very big difference and make it very, very frustrating. And these are even easier. I could talk about citrus, but citrus can be really quite frustrating and difficult because they're very prone to things like root rot problems. They don't like dry atmosphere. They can get plagued with lots of sort of pests and diseases, scale insect, mealybugs, spider mites, and they do cause all sorts of issues. And these 3 that I'm going to cover here are virtually, for me, I found them completely pest free, very tolerant of my household growing conditions in winter, although they do suffer, some of them do suffer leaf loss. They normally bounce back from it, but more importantly, they can, as you can probably see from the one in the middle here, they can flower here reasonably well, and can potentially produce fruit here as well, which is a lot trickier on their bigger cousins and relatives. So the one I'm going to start with actually is not this one in the middle. The one I'm going to start with here is the Suriname cherry. This is Eugenia uniflora even. Now these little tropicals are, this one here, if I remember rightly, is actually a seed grown one. They grow quite quickly. Now all of these plants I'm going to feature today can probably flower within about 3 or 4 years from seed. 4 years, even in this country, they'd probably be quick in their own tropical climates. They might even flower within 2 years. They're relatively easy to get some flowers on. The plants themselves are very tough. I've got to be interested in this Suriname cherry, not sure why it hasn't got any flowers on it at the moment. Talking specifically about the Suriname cherry, the fruit is not to everybody's like. It can have a bit of a sort of like a turpentine flavour to it. The ones I've had on my own taller plant, they're quite sort of sour and acidic, although there are some varieties that produce very good quality sweet fruit, but you can't buy the named varieties here, so you are probably restricted to growing from seed in most cases. Even if it's a seed from a named variety, there's no real guarantee that you're going to get good quality fruits on it, but I have managed to get them to fruit. Now the interesting thing about the Suriname cherry, again, it's a plant you can keep quite compact. This hasn't got flowers on it, but it is flowering size. Very tolerant of any soil conditions, unlike some of the more difficult tropicals or the larger tropicals. I've had no root rot issues with any of these 3 species that I'm going to feature today, regardless of watering. I'm not suggesting you wouldn't want to drown them and overwater them, but I've never lost any to root rot. They seem to be tolerant of both acidic, alkaline and neutral soils. It doesn't seem to make much difference whether you plant them in a normal potting compost or make up a special mix such as a citrus type 511 mix. but basically their health seems to be at the moment relatively easy to maintain. They don't require high temperatures either in winter or even in summer. These Suriname cherries, from my experience, this one stayed in my summer house all winter with the citrus, and it got down to about -3, -4 degrees during that really cold spell, and apart from a couple of branch tips dying, the plant seemed to suffer no harm at all. So you could have a very good chance of growing these permanently, I would say, in a cold greenhouse or a polytunnel. Of course, if you give them winter heat, then they're going to do better. I quite often keep most of my Suriname cherries in the house over winter, just on windowsills. Now, they don't, like most tropicals, they don't like particularly dry air, and the plants do defoliate to a degree in winter, but they're normally left with some leaves on. You can always trim them back a bit. Now, the interesting thing about them is they have those typical myrtle type flowers that you will also see in a minute on this lily pilly, and also on the cherry guavas, which is the third one I'm going to feature. They have these small pom-pom type flowers, but the interesting about the Suriname cherry is it only takes about probably 6 to 8 weeks maximum for the flowers to develop to mature fruits. Now, that has a lot of advantages in our climate, because obviously any fruit that you can get within a couple of months with our short summers is absolutely perfect, and certainly that's very true of the Suriname cherry. It's the quickest developing fruit of the ones that I'm talking about here. They are very, very quick from flower, so everybody's got a fair chance of growing them, and you might conceivably even better overwinter one outside if you had some layers of fleece on it and extra protection. I haven't tried one outside yet, but as I have quite a few seedling plants, I may eventually try one and see what sort of cold it will tolerate. But obviously the -6, -7, -8 centigrade we got last December would not be suitable. So that's my tip number one. Oh, and the other reason I'm featuring these, especially as I'm based in the UK, these plants are sourceable in the UK. You have got a chance of buying a Suriname cherry. I know they do them at Jurassic Plants, and I have seen young seedlings quite randomly pop up on Etsy, eBay, Amazon and other such places, and you can get the seeds here relatively easy as well from suppliers that will post them to the UK. So these are gettable as young plants, and they make a very attractive subtropical foliage plant. And this one, as I said, is flowering size, doesn't have any flowers on it at the moment, but it would certainly, in the right conditions, bear flowers and possibly fruits. Now, the second one I'm going to feature, which obviously you will have seen in several of my videos, is my lily pilly. This is Syzygium smithii, this particular one. There are 2 or 3 species which are referred to as lily pilly, and I do have another one which I forget the Latin name of, but the reason I'm featuring this one is because it's in full flower. Now, I bought this as a seedling plant again from Jurassic Plants, I believe about 3 years ago, and it had a few flowers on it last year, and the plant's now about 3 feet tall, so it's just under 1 metre tall, and it is absolutely smothered in flowers, which I've noticed that the bees, bumblebees, honeybees and wasps seem to like. I can't really detect much of a scent to them. Again, it's proved fairly problem free for me. I did have some defoliation at the beginning of last summer, which I believe I either underwatered it or overwatered it. Obviously, like all of these subtropicals, I don't really want to be drowned. I suspect it's because I didn't water it when it was dry, and in obviously a little bit of a fit, it dropped a lot of its leaves, but it grew back extremely quickly, and as you can see, it's absolutely, I hope you can see, it's absolutely covered in flowers and flower buds now. The new growth has this lovely sort of red tinge to it. The leaves are about the same size and very similar in appearance to the Suriname cherry. The plants tend to be a little bit more upright. The Suriname cherry, I find, is a little bit more of a spreading bush. Now what I can't tell you about at the moment is the time it takes from flower to fruit. Now I had a few flowers on this last year, none of which actually set fruit. Now there is a bit of a question mark over how self-fertile some of the Syzygium family are. I mean, the problem with these when they're grown from seed, although they're meant to be self-fertile, there will be variation between seedlings, so you can't presume that the plant will definitely produce fruits. Now one thing about these I did notice is it takes a long time for the flower buds to develop. The flower buds on this started were apparent in, I think it was early to mid-May when I put it outside, and it's taken until the end of July, beginning of August for the buds to actually get to flowering size. Now that does tend to make me think that the fruits might also take possibly 5 or 6 months. The fruits are only small, they're normally about no more than a centimetre in diameter, and they're a lovely sort of magenta pink colour, and it is sometimes called the magenta cherry as well. But as I said, until this hopefully sets fruits, and maybe with this larger quantity of flowers on it and being visited by the bees, I might get fruit set this year. I will find out how long it takes to hold the fruits on it before they develop. But the same thing I found, the plant seems to be tolerant of most soil types. They have a reputation for being pretty tough. I think they would survive a light frost. I don't think I'd risk them at -3, -4, and obviously I've only got the one flowering plant. I haven't got several, so I wouldn't want to risk one outside. But again, I think that a cold greenhouse or a polytunnel or an unheated conservatory, or indeed an unheated summer house, probably will be adequate for these to survive over the winter. Again, I had this one in my kitchen, so it's put up with quite a dry atmosphere. It did defoliate a little bit, but not as badly as the Suriname cherry. It lost a few leaves, so it seems to be tolerant of a dry atmosphere, and I believe this is another subtropical fruit that any amateur grower would be quite happy to have a go at growing, and would be successful. And again, the seedlings do crop up on the usual places here, such as eBay, and obviously I know that Jurassic Plants at various times do stock them, and I'm not being sponsored by them, but people are going to ask me where they can get these plants, and I've got to say this one is absolutely worth growing for the red new growth and this fabulous flower display. It'd be lovely if it sets fruit and produces fruits, but from the point of view of growing, this is way easier than its more tropical relatives. Obviously you could conceivably buy a Syzygium cumini, which is the jamun or jambalan, and you could possibly you might get hold of a rose apple, although they're very hard to buy here, or a wax apple or wax jambu, but they are all a lot more tropical and are going to be a lot more challenging to look after, and probably very much more prone to root rot. It just hasn't been a problem for me with the lily pilly or either of these other two subtropicals so far. So I'm just going to pop this one over here so that I can feature the third one. I'm sure everyone will know what it's going to be. This is the strawberry or lemon cherry guava. This is Basidium cattleyanum. Don't know what one this is. I haven't got a label in it. This will be a seed growing plant. I probably would have bought it as a seedling from somebody, but I can't remember if this might be one that I got from Spain some time ago before Brexit. So this plant could be 3 or 4 years old now. They are quite quick growing. I haven't really concentrated on growing this one quickly, but again, this size plant, this one hasn't got flowers on it, but this size plant can flower. Now they're far and away the easiest of the tropical and subtropical guavas to keep alive. You've got a much better chance of getting flowers and fruits on one of these. These seem to take about they tend to flower here for me mainly because they do suffer from some dieback in winter. Now the problems I've had with dieback here are due to the dry atmosphere in my house. They would prefer to probably be cooler and slightly more humid. Nevertheless, I have grown these quite successfully as house plants, and they've come through the winter very well. They just tend to lose some leaves, but as you can see, they bush out again. Once you've trimmed off any growth that's properly dead, they bush out again very, very, very quickly. Now, they can put on at least a foot a year here in growth once they get going. As I said, had I got this one into a bigger pot, I only planted this in this pot this summer. It was a tiny little sort of 5 or 6 inch pot, so I think if I'd got it in a bigger pot I probably would have got flowers on it this year. Now so far from experience, they seem to take about 5 or 6 months from flower to ripe fruit. Now it is borderline here with our weather, because obviously if these flower outside here, when you bring them outside, if these don't flower till July, then you're really looking at November, December, and by then it's getting too cold outside for the fruits to develop properly. But if you could give them a little bit of protection, have these flowering in April or May, perhaps in a cold greenhouse or again in a polytunnel or anywhere, even a conservatory, then there's every likelihood that they would flower earlier in the season. And obviously if they flower earlier in the season, they're going to fruit a little bit earlier. But as I said, there are 2 main types. There's basically the yellow and the red one. So one is normally referred to as the lemon or yellow cherry guava, and the other one is normally referred to as the strawberry guava. Hardiness, again, they're one of the hardiest of the subtropical guavas, said to handle -2, -3 degrees centigrade, not regularly but certainly in short bursts. And I can confirm that because I planted one in ground a couple of years ago, and the previous winter, apart from some leaf deterioration, it survived the winter virtually untouched. Unfortunately, if you've been watching my other videos, this winter we had those -7s and a foot of snow and cold temperatures for a week, and the one I had in ground died back completely to the ground. It was completely destroyed. However, it has, as I've shown you in other videos, been recovering this summer right from just below ground, and it's now about a foot tall again. But it clearly will need proper protection next winter if we get cold spells. So as I said, I don't think I'd worry if you had this outside and it got down to about 0 or -1. You will get leaf damage on it, but no real problems with major dieback at those temperatures. But it probably again got the same sort of hardiness levels of the lily pilly and the Suriname cherry, and probably the same sort of hardiness levels of most citrus. Again, I've had 0 pest or disease problems on them. Sometimes you get a few thrips when they're indoors, which discolour the leaves because the thrips like that dry household heat. However, I haven't had any scale insects that I can recall on my cherry guavas. I don't recall having any mealybugs on them, or spider mites or green fly or anything else. So again, they seem to be completely pest free. So it's another subtropical for the beginner that you might want to try and get hold of. And again, I know they sell seedlings at Jurassic Plants. You do see them advertised by other people on the various auction websites over here, and you may plenty of the Facebook groups will be people who have grown these from seed. So you can certainly get, you can't buy the fruits here because the fruits don't travel well and they'd be perishable and they're quite small and bruised, but you could certainly get seeds from people who have grown the fruits here, and you can definitely buy seeds quite easily from various online sellers that will post subtropical and tropical fruits to the UK. No real problem with customs, I wouldn't say. It's my experience with bringing in a few fruit seeds. They're not really interested in small packets of seeds, but it's the plants, of course, are an issue. So that's number 3, and again you can see there's no disease problems on it. I'm going to bring the other one back into the picture so you can enjoy the flowers again. So those are my 3 hot tips for subtropicals that you really are worth having a go at if you would like to try and start growing tropicals. I mean, if you delve into proper tropical guavas, for example, they're very much trickier to keep alive in winter because they really do need more humidity. They're not as cold tolerant as any of these three plants. They have to be a lot bigger before they flower, and I believe that in this country it's going to take between 9 and 12 months from flower to ripe fruit for a tropical guava, which poses a lot of problems because it means if you've got to keep that plant healthy for the whole of the 9 to 12 months without any serious leaf loss or diseases or problems, because otherwise it will drop the fruit. So it's not a good idea to start with the large fruited tropicals that require a lot more attention. They're much fussier as regards the composts you use for keeping the roots healthy. It's going to take them a lot longer to flower. If they do flower, the likelihood of them producing edible fruits is very low. But these three I can definitely recommend without hesitation of being well worth growing, and you really have got a good chance in this country with a little bit of care and attention of seeing flowers on your plants. Potentially there is a chance they'll produce edible fruits for you as well. But you cannot buy these fruits. You can't buy lily-pilly fruits here, or cherry guavas or Suriname cherries. They will never be available in this country. You can only get them freshly picked and eat them fresh off the tree, because none of the fruits travel or last very long, and they're obviously prone to bruising. So if you want to try any of those fruits, you've got to grow them. Now if you get a few seedlings going, it might be worth trying them outside in an extremely sheltered part of your garden, especially if you don't mind giving them some protection over winter, because I think there is a chance these would, outside of London, there is a chance in a very favourable area that you might get them to survive, because I've certainly got a friend whose parents have got a cherry guava up in, I think, the Liverpool area growing under a carport, and that was not damaged by the cold last winter, because it's obviously very sheltered. The downside is if you try to grow them in ground all year round, I would think the odds of them fruiting are almost zero, because our summer growing season won't be long enough for them. But certainly if you're prepared to have them in pots, you've got a greenhouse, conservatory, or a nice bright windowsill indoors, imagine the fun of having one of these lily-pillies flower on your windowsill. Excuse me, bit of a frog in my throat. Anyway, I hope that those three tips were useful to someone who hasn't got these. Obviously a lot of my friends who are watching in the UK have probably got all of these plants already, but if you're just getting into growing unusual plants over here, and especially like to have a go at some of the more tropical or subtropical fruit plants, I think that the Suriname cherry, lily-pilly and strawberry or lemon cherry guava are absolutely your best bets, and the one you've got the best chance of doing well with. So anyway, there they are. Thanks very much for watching the video. Hope it is going to prove useful and perhaps give someone some inspiration. By all means, you're welcome to give me a thumbs up. I always appreciate one of those. Share the video with any friends who you think might be interested in having a go from seed or buying seedlings of these plants over here and didn't think they could buy them. Certainly it's worth trying Jurassic plants, because at various times of the year they will have seedlings of some of those, but otherwise just a search on eBay or Google might turn up suitable plants for you. Please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and of course if you want to see updates on these and find out about some of the other plants I'm trying to grow and keep healthy here, then do remember to click on that bell, and that will let you know when new videos come out. So I'll see you all in the next video. Brett out for now.